And I hope it was a blessing for people. And that's probably something I hope that we will want to consider continuing. Last week I mentioned that this week I wanted us to look at an article in the Christian Chronicle, and I could kick myself for not reminding you of that. And I thought about that about 10 o'clock last night. Was anybody able, did you remember to look at that article? Ozzy?
Was that the one about Las Vegas?
Yes.
Sin City? Yeah, I did.
Yes. Okay. All right. One, I had a really nice I had one of the nicest PowerPoints I think I've ever put together, and I forgot how to put it up here. And I tried to call Kim earlier, and he didn't answer. Anyway, we'll get that figured out. Yeah. By the way, did anyone did anyone listen to the song that I sent out about I've just seen Jesus with Sandy Patty and Lionel Harris? I I just think that is powerful. I can't imagine, and we'll talk about this this morning with our subject will be the empty tomb, and I just can't imagine what it would be like. You see the videos of a father and mother or a child, and they're surprised by their son or father who has come back from the war in Iraq or Afghanistan. You know what I'm talking about? And the emotion on them when they see the person, and how they'll be brought to tears and things like that. Um, I can't imagine what it would be like all of a sudden to see my father again. And I just thought that was a powerful song. I never get tired of listening to it. Um, okay, what I wanted to look at today was the some of the reasons they gave on why we might be gambling with our souls today. Church attendance is on a decline. I did read something or watch something yesterday or the day before that talked about young people returning to Catholicism, they said by droves. Did anybody read that or see that? Okay. Um, but churches are declining in attendance. And maybe what are some of the reasons why? Let me see if I can pull up that PowerPoint if you can see it real quick, and then I'll come back to you. Um, well, what happened to it? I just really wanted to see what a neat thing it looked like. What am I missing? Well, okay. It is what it is. So I need to come back to you. There we are. All right. The first thing they mentioned, this group that got together in Las Vegas, one of the problems they said is virtual church. And I thought about this, and I do hear a lot of pastors say that they haven't recovered from the COVID, that people are still watching virtually the service every Sunday. And I'm not sure your thoughts on that. And they suggested in this article here that if you're able to attend, you don't, one, they said, it's a sin. Um, I don't know if I'm going to go that far, but they use the example of not forsaking the assembly, and there is a need to see each other. There's a need to shake hands with each other, to give each other a hug, to look each other in the eye. And you don't get that being at home virtually. Now, those who are disabled, that's a different animal. One person suggested we should have continued to meet even during COVID. I think it was illegal, against the law anyhow, and I'm not sure how bright that would have been. But what are your thoughts about virtual services today? They like what Patrick Mead does, the Harbor Church, and I know people that are fully, able to attend, but they just tune into the Harbor Church every Sunday. What is the response? Can you hear me, Lyle?
I think you said it earlier, Garth, that you cannot experience all of that is available, let's say it that way, in Christian life if you are doing it remotely. And there are you said there are some people that can't do things out and shut in and what have you, but so that's a blessing to be able to call in, which you never could do that in the past. So, but yeah, just to make that your standard. The other thing that happens, and this has been for a long time, before the internet and all that, you had radio, TV, and when I used to have a really long commute. I used to listen to a lot of different preachers. You recognize names, but a lot of times at the end of their radio program or whatever, they'd say, and remember, this is not a substitute for attending your local service. Don't just tune in to me because these guys are very well known,
Yeah.
talented communicators and all that. But they knew that even back then there were people who would just substitute. They had a tendency to substitute just, hey, I can listen to the top world class preaching and that can substitute for my Christian walk, which is you're not going to develop the local body that way, right? Think if everybody did that, we wouldn't see the body of Christ.
Right. Lyle?
The other thing is, it tells us to get together and break bread. I don't know how you do that over television. But the thing is, it's a great way to extend to those that are sick and that can participate limitedly, but to make it a substitute, no, it can never really do that.
Yeah.
I think it has a place, but it needs to be kept in its place and not made something that how do you take the Lord's Supper if you're thousands of miles apart from each other?
Right. Bill?
Yeah, I think about the time we had COVID, and we did do that virtually, and we had our bread and our food of the vine to partake of it. But it was a miserable time because of that reason. You didn't get to see your brotherhood. You just were
Right.
out of that part of it. It was just a miserable time. You have to feel that way, even though you got a message, every time.
Yeah. Anybody else want to give some input? Yes, Jack.
I think that we forget how important fellowship is.
Bingo.
We just don't, you don't hear it in sermons too much or anything that it's really, really important to, like a lot of people have been saying, that look each other in the eye, to shake your hand, to just talk and just share some of your life and some of their life, know what they're going through, day in and day out. It's, I think fellowship is one of the most important things about being a Christian, and yet we don't talk about it much.
I need to see you. And even though I can see you, this isn't good enough. Okay? You know, I need to be able to hug you. Now, I'm not suggesting that I don't enjoy Florida down here, okay? but yeah, I can't wait to get home and give Chuck a big kiss on the cheek, you know. Yeah. And
Take your time.
yeah, take my time. Take another week, Garth. Yeah, but well, you know who Patrick Mead is. How many remember when Patrick was in our Wednesday night class? You know, and he's got that Harbor Church. It's all over the country now. It's unbelievable. But you know, like I said, we have some dear friends that just watch him every week. I'm not going to say it's a sin. I can't go that far. Um, it's you know, it's sort of like the old guy when I was at Lake Orion that came to me and he said, I hear that there's a Church of Christ over in Grand Rapids is teaching air. Do you think we ought to go over and talk to him? And I said, Brother Dan, I think we've got enough issues right here at Lake Orion. And so, you know, I have enough sin not to worry about, you know, that. Now during COVID, well, here's what I would listen to 3 sermons every Sunday. You know, I really got fed, and that was an advantage, I thought. I would, you know, listen to Adam Hill, Josh Graves, and I would listen to Greg down here at Celebration. So, and Ozzy,
You know, I don't know what your thoughts are, but you know, as we talk about this, I kind of think of you being an educator, how you feel about homeschooling, because I've always felt that some people, parents think it's the greatest thing in the world, but I really think that those young people miss out on this when they're homeschooled as far as the social part of it. And I think there's a comparison there with what you're talking about with the church.
I think that's a good comparison. Ozzy, I will say this. The students that I had at the college who are homeschooled were the best students I had in class. I mean, I know as educators we hate to hear that, but they were. And my daughter at one time started to homeschool her 2 kids. And I looked at the material that they had, that they watch and things like that. It was quality stuff. My son came home, my youngest son, from 8th grade. And he said, guess what I did today, Dad? I said, what? He said, I put a condom on a banana. And so I guess, Ozzy, what I'm saying, I do understand maybe why some parents are a little, you know, anxious about what goes on. And my son's a 5th grade teacher at Rochester, and he would not argue with me, but he would say it's not that bad, various things like that. But I think that's a good illustration, because kids need to have each other. I think that's a really good illustration, Ozzy. What about the idea that the person said people are lazy? You know, I just get up, I stay in my pajamas, I get a cup of coffee, I sit on the couch, and I watch the church service. Interesting. Any other comments before I move on? Okay. The second thing that they brought up was unscriptural church practices is another reason that we are gambling with our souls. Now, here are some of the things they mentioned. Praise teams, female song leaders, instrumental music, and something I don't know what it is, beatboxing. You know, Ron, do you know what that is? Beatboxing?
Yeah. It's where you use your mouth as a rapper to create a beat.
Got you. Thank you. Thank you. And now, you probably know that I took some exceptions to that. I love praise teams. Now, I know if Ken Hadley was here, Ken didn't like them. How many have been at a church where they've had praise teams? Anybody? How many didn't like them? Okay, 2 of you.
The reason, I'll say the reason, Garth,
What was the reason?
the reason was you couldn't hear, it was so loud that you couldn't hear yourself. You couldn't hear the person next to you. It was,
Okay.
It was 4 people with microphones at
Yeah.
102 decibels. It was terrible.
Yeah. The first time I ever heard a praise team, we had a basketball tournament in Amarillo, Texas. Anyone been to Amarillo? Okay, if you're going from Oklahoma City to Amarillo, I saw the lights of Amarillo, and I got there 2 hours later. It's the flattest land in the world. You can play marbles on that land. Anyone go to the Big Texan and eat a 62-ounce steak or whatever and all its trimmings? Okay. When we went by there was some old cowboy riding a bull. And I said, I'm going to ride that bull. And so our last day there, we went out, we took the kids to the Big Texan just to look around, and I went looking for that bull. And I found him. And I asked the cowboy, how much you charge me to ride that bull? He said, $2. I gave him $2, and it was a Brahma bull. My player said it was half dead. It might have been. It was like 1,500 pounds, and I got on that Brahma bull, and he led it around. And but anyway, and then we took a picture of the Brahma bull with the whole team. I said, how much you charge for a picture? He said, $20. But anyway, we got up Sunday morning and we went to the Central Church of Christ in Amarillo. And I'm sitting there and the singing, I thought, man, this is really good. You know, I could hear the bass, I could hear the tenor and all that. And I said, it sounds like, well, they had 4 people sitting up there with a microphone. Now, now they're on stage. How many have ever heard of Randy Gill? Anybody heard of Randy Gill? Randy went to the college. He was our music teacher there. He was a very popular speaker at youth rallies. And then he was head of the department at Pepperdine, and now he's at Lipscomb. Randy said he would never lead singing by himself again. He thought it was a little, maybe, arrogance not the right word, but, just one person up there leading singing. I'm not sure where we came up with that. There's nothing wrong with it. But, I enjoy praise teams. How many listen to the Gaithers? Anybody listen to the Gaithers besides me? Okay. They're good. I think they're great. Why don't I play the Gaithers here? Well, the Gaithers were the group that sang the other day that I sent you, Lionel and Sandy Patty. Well, she has a voice. I just seen Jesus. That's the Gaithers. But they have what? Oh, what do they worship with? Instruments. Yeah. And I would never cause problems with it. Let me rephrase this. Instruments don't bother me. I personally think they can add to the worship. That's me. What I don't like is what my grandkids like. And I'm not going to question their spirituality at all. I mean, I see these young kids, and man, I see them praising God. But to me, the guitars are too loud, the drum is too loud, and things like that. And yes, Ron.
Well, there's a difference between godliness, what's right and wrong, and what God condones, and preference. I prefer certain kinds of music.
Exactly.
There's a preference. But I've never really understood the instrumental argument. I don't think it's a salvation issue, but this is where my issue is with it. At some churches, the congregation will be split, and some don't want instruments, and some think instruments are okay. And if they don't have instruments, nobody walks out and says, I'm not coming anymore. But the people that have a position that they don't agree with instruments, I have been in congregations where they say, well, if we're going to use instruments, then I'll leave. And I think that's the issue. It's a hard issue. If you're going to leave because you don't agree with something over a preference, then that's what we need to discuss and get out. Because God says, I pray you may be perfectly united in 1 Corinthians. Perfectly united in all things. There shouldn't be any divisions. And we can get into, look, in Revelation in the New Testament, there's horns and there's trumpets in heaven. And we can go down and back and forth all day long. But it's really a hard issue. Like, if you're going to walk out because there are instruments, I think that's what needs to get discussed if we're going to have the discussion. Because people that, say, well, I believe in instruments, but we don't have them in church, nobody walks out. We just say, okay, this is not a hill that we need to die on. But for some people it is.
Yeah, and that's true. And my dad would have died on that hill. My dad thought with all his heart that it was wrong to use instruments, and and he would tell me why. His arguments didn't work with me. My dad believed that a widow only can marry a Christian. How many of you are familiar with that in the church? Yeah. Because it says widows marry in the Lord. A widower, I guess, can marry anyone I want. But I would go to my dad and I would say, Dad, does a child only have to obey their parents if the parents are a Christian? And he says, no. I says, well, it says children obey your parents in the Lord. It's the same meaning. But yeah, I mean, Ron is left. But yeah, there's a difference between like preference. And I don't prefer the kind of songs that my grandkids, worship songs, that they like to see. They like to sing. That's okay. My parents wouldn't like some of the songs that I enjoy. Yeah, I've always said that I would not ever divide a church. You giving me how many minutes we have? Oh. And we can talk about this. Where I got word one time that a group of people thought I was going to have a praise team at the service on Sunday. And if I did, they were going to walk out of church. And so I called the man who was sort of leading that. And I said, is this true? And he said, yes. I says, well, there's a group of people, if I don't have a praise team, that's going to walk out of church. He said, really? And I said, no, I made it up. I lied, Jack. And but he didn't understand that. Am I making sense what I'm saying there?
I think Paul covers this pretty well. The Apostle Paul, he knew this was coming up, and it's as you guys are saying, there's preferences. There's preferences for all sorts of things, but what does God like? That would be the first question we should ask. And then there's we get into we're told to sing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. So where does that line get drawn? But Paul, there was a problem in the church where some people couldn't eat meat because they had come from a background
Right.
of idols. And Paul said, I'm never going to cause somebody to leave the church or sin because of my diet. And so he deferred, even though he's perfectly free to. He knew that it was fine to eat that meat as far as his conscience, but it's a matter of conscience for others. So for us to do things together, sometimes someone has to defer, and maybe it's the stronger brethren. I don't like Halloween, for example. I'll give you a personal example, and I call myself I'm the weaker brother, I guess. So I don't like a lot of things about Halloween, so we don't do it. But other people, it doesn't bother them at all.
Right.
So we have to be loving, and we can't force our preferences on others. And sometimes that often causes problems. We joke around here about the color of the paint, or really dumb things like that. People have split churches over, and that Brian mentioned, the unity is key. And sometimes someone has
Yeah.
scriptural practice.
Right. I think Howard, you and I are along the same line there. You know, and I agree with you on that. There are some things that again that I don't think are wrong, but I don't promote it because I know it might. I did not bring cards into our house because my dad was against it. It reminded my dad of his young days, you know, and things like that when he gambled and things like, you know, that. So I just didn't bring cards into the house out of, you know, respect for him. And yeah, it was, he did not like me playing pool. And again, it goes back to his days and how he played pool, you might say. And okay, 4 minutes. All right, good discussion. And so, anybody else have anything before I move on? Going back to the beatboxing, there was a group called Acapella. I don't know if you remember them, Keith Lancaster and Rodney, and then they had a quartet too. And so they were singing at Bristol Road. And the one guy with his mouth is making the sound of instruments. And Ken Hoggett's young boy asked about that. And Ken told him, you know, it was one guy just making the sound. And so the little boy said, oh, it's okay to use instruments if we use our voice. We just can't use instruments. I thought, you know, the little kid had a pretty good question there. And again, I love the Gaithers. You like the Gaithers, Jack? Yep. Yeah. And Wilma, you like the Gaithers. Howard, you never listened to the Gaithers?
I listen to them. I don't listen to them as a regular.
Okay.
They
Man,
wouldn't be a group that I would listen to regularly now.
I listen to them every time I get a chance. I've been to 2 or 3 of their concerts. And but anyway, okay. You know, we'll continue this. And the other thing they talked about, it was wrong, that maybe this is why we're gambling our souls away, is that we refer to people by an academic name or a hierarchical name. Like, okay, Dr. Oz is going to lead us in prayer. You know, and I mean, I'm thinking that's stretching a little bit. They talked about a senior minister, a youth minister, and things like that. I'm not sure.
Hey, Garth, can you remind me, it's been a couple weeks since I read that article, but were they, all these things you're bringing up, were they saying that because some of our congregations were doing these things, people were leaving, or the opposite? Because to me it seems it's the opposite. If you look at the churches, the mega churches and all of these things, that the larger groups that you see out there today, they are doing all of these things, not the other way around. So I wasn't following the logic on this thing. You know,
There's,
it seems
yeah,
like people are leaving because we have Dr. You know, our preacher is called Dr. Smith, and I don't think people leave for that reason.
well, that they're saying this is why we're losing people. Virtual church, we're losing them because of a praise team and things like that. Do you remember when I had Adam Hill on a Wednesday night with us in Rochester at one time was 700 people. And they might be 200, 250 at the most. And I said, you know, what is the reason? And he talked about we haven't recovered from the COVID, things like that. And I said, well, how is Woodside have 5,000 people? They're growing, they have 500 baptisms a year. And he, I don't know if you remember, he says, well, they're into performance.
He said they have a better product.
And yeah, you know, and he talked about they perform, that people were getting paid. You know, maybe some are, but Rochester has, I don't know how many people on their staff, but they're giving something that the people want. And I think, you know, and we might, and again, they are sure growing. And I know the people, the pastors there, and Doug Schmidt is one of the finest people I know. And yeah, you're right, Howard. And we're going to talk about time up. Okay. All right. We'll continue this in a couple of weeks. And so I will try to get some